Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and today we've got a lot to cover. It's going to be a little bit of a different episode than usual today because we have some breaking news out of Atlanta. The Hawks have officially traded away Kobe Bufkin, the third-year guard that they drafted out of Michigan. They traded him to the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for cash considerations. That's it. They didn't get an attached second round pick. They didn't get a young player in return. They traded Bufkin for cash considerations. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of that. And this is all according to Shams Charania. So it's true stuff. I didn't plan to make a video like this for today's episode, but things happen in the NBA. It's a very you can't predict what's going to happen in this league. So while on the surface, a Kobe Bufkin trade is not something that's going to make headlines. It's not just a simple roster shuffle. I mean, it has far-reaching implications for the Atlanta Hawks rotation, their financial flexibility for years to come, and also potentially their ability to make another move before the season tips off very soon. We are quickly approaching media day and training camp, so it's interesting that they would make a move like that this late into the offseason, but it's awesome for content because we've got a lot to talk about. So in this video, we are going to deep dive into the details of the trade itself, explore Atlanta's internal option to potentially replace what Bufkin's role was supposed to be going into this upcoming season. He wasn't projected to have a very large role, but nonetheless, it is still a void that Atlanta has to fill. We're also going to examine the free agent market now that Atlanta has a spot to fill. Names like Russell Westbrook and guys like that are still available, and Atlanta should check in on that. And then we're going to close today's video by discussing some trade targets who could potentially fill that void. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the video. So Kobe Bufkin was the Hawks' 15th overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft. I'm sure you all remember. It was immediately met by some critics. This wasn't someone who was projected. He was kind of projected around the 15 to 20 range, but some people thought Atlanta kind of took a risk there by taking him, and that's certainly what it panned out to be. This wasn't something that ended up working out. He was drafted with the vision of adding a combo guard either next to Trae Young or just to have a guy that can come off the bench and provide some valuable play. They maybe replicate the defensive instincts that they've been trying to get next to Trae Young. And now they have Dyson Daniels, so it was just kind of like it was a weird fit at this day and age. Bufkin was highly regarded coming out of Michigan, and where his sophomore season, he actually played 2 seasons in college. He wasn't a traditional one and done like we see all the time today, but he averaged 14 points and 5 rebounds and nearly 3 assists, and close to a steal per game. So those numbers at Michigan looked really good, and there's a reason why he got that hype as a potential lottery pick. Atlanta ended up taking him at 15. Importantly, he also improved that true shooting percentage from his freshman to sophomore year by over 10%. That kind of growth, that growth as a shooter, going from your first year in college to your second year in college, is kind of what NBA scouts like to see. Just showing signs of growth as a scorer and a decision maker. But despite his promise, the early promise that it made Atlanta take him in the first round, he never got the full opportunity that we wanted out of him. So across 2 injury-riddled seasons, he appeared in just 27 games. 27 games in 2 years is not good, no matter the context or however you try to put it. He had a potential 164 games to play in, because this was a guy who was never on a two-way. I mean, the Hawks signed him to a standard rookie deal because they picked him 15th overall. But he only appeared in 27 games, and the averages were not good. He averaged 5 points a game, 2 rebounds, and just under 2 assists per game, with some pretty horrific shooting splits. No matter how he pans out in Brooklyn, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, his Atlanta tenure is going to be looked at as a failure. As unfortunate as it is to say, I mean, the numbers just seriously don't look good, and he only played in 27 games. So even this past summer, which, he had a somewhat improved performance in Summer League. He actually looked a lot more confident out there. He was the real leader of that team. And the Hawks played very, very well in Summer League. He showed leadership. He improved his strength clearly and showed some defensive growth as well as ability to get to the free throw line. I mean, he was knocking down free throws at a crazy rate. I believe he had that one game where he was like 15 of 15 from the line. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think it was something around that. The thing is, though, he didn't improve on the one thing that Atlanta kind of needed him to improve on. and that was his shooting struggles. It still raised questions about whether he even crack Atlanta's crowded backcourt rotation, and I think it was getting clear as the season got near that he would not be someone that would be in the nightly rotation. I mean, I think some of these internal guys were probably ahead of him in that, and the possibility that Bufkin's camp was like, all right, we need to get him out of Atlanta. There's too many guards there. He's not going to play. Let's get him to Brooklyn, where they're in a situation where they're tanking and, they're trying to get as high of a draft pick as possible. It could be a situation like that. There's been no reports of that, but I wouldn't be surprised because I do think this is a pretty good landing spot for Kobe Bufkin. But that's the key point here. The Hawks already signed Luke Kennard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker this offseason. Both of them are guards who fit better on a team, with the intent of making the playoffs. Bufkin, who honestly, he was a shooting guard coming out of Michigan, and he had played shooting guard his entire life. And Atlanta kind of forced him into that point guard role. But I mean, that while watching him play, that looks like his natural position. So I think that was a good find by the scouting team, but it just has not panned out. He just didn't fit anymore with Atlanta's current scheme and current vision, and especially their trajectory heading into this upcoming season. So instead of keeping a young player buried on the bench, Atlanta gave him that fresh start in Brooklyn. Playing time is far more available. This could be the best outcome for a young Bufkin, as he now has 2 years before free agency to prove he belongs in the league. For the Hawks, though, the immediate impact is that this trade opens up a roster spot and creates real competition heading into training camp. There's going to be 7 players: Keaton Wallace, Jacob Toppin, Eli Njai, Kobe Johnson, Nafali Dante, Charles Bassey, and Caleb Houston. All of them are going to be fighting for one of the last few roster spots. So the battle became a whole lot more interesting because there is an open slot. I don't expect Atlanta to use the rest of their remaining spots, which is technically 2. I don't think they'll use both of those on the internal guys that I just listed, but I think they'll explore some options outside of it. But this training camp battle will still be very fun to keep up with because while you've got guys on with like Keaton Wallace and Jacob Toppin and Eli Njai that are on 2-way, so they're technically with the roster. You could maybe see now with a point guard gone in Bufkin, you could maybe see Keaton Wallace's contract converted to a standard contract rather than a 2-way. I am just gonna come out and say right here that is looking like a realistic possibility. Keaton Wallace getting a standard contract, and I don't think that is the worst option if some of the stuff I mentioned later in this video can't go through. So it's going to be very interesting to keep up with over the next few weeks. But yeah, this Kobe Bufkin trade is really shaking things up. It was really unexpected. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and move on and talk about what this means for Atlanta's depth chart, specifically at backup point guards. Because while Bufkin was not expected to be a major part of the rotation this year, he was one of only 2 true point guards on the roster, with Trae Young. So now with him gone, it is literally just Trae Young who is a traditional point guard. It is him, and then you can make the argument that Nikola Jurisic, who is now on a standard deal, is a point guard, but he's really positionless. I mean, that's a guy who can play the guard, who can play the forward. You can't really lock him in as a guard or a forward. He's a very versatile player. In terms of just pure point guards, it's only Trae Young on the Hawks now. Atlanta's plan, however, kind of seems to lean heavily on non-traditional playmakers, which is a very interesting way to kind of surprise a defense. I kind of like it, to be honest. If they aren't going to make another move for a traditional backup point guard, I kind of like the idea of running these big guards or wings at the 1 and seeing what they can do as the lead ball handler in the second unit. Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson are expected to initiate plenty of offense in the starting lineup, and then when Trae goes to the bench, those 2 guys can seriously, maybe they've taken a leap. I mean, you got to remember that these 2 guys are still very young, even though they've made, huge progression in their game. But in the second unit, though, the Hawks are going to experiment with several other ball handlers. So the most realistic internal option to kind of be the official backup point guard is Luke Kennard. While at first you may be like, wait, this guy, is he not a spot-up shooter? He's really not. And while he's best known as one of the league's elite three-point shooters, he's actually 3rd all-time for a certain category in three-point percentage. He has quietly been effective running second units during his time in Memphis. Now, whether that's been because of Scottie Pippen Jr. being hurt or Ja Morant being hurt, he's had several opportunities to showcase that he can run an offense when he is the lead guard, and it has looked pretty good. The offensive ratings have been been really solid. I mean, he's a steady decision maker. He can operate out of the pick and roll. He can locate guys in the corner. I mean, just a guy who could run the offense when Trae Young goes to the bench. He could shoulder some playmaking responsibility, even if it's not his immediate natural role. I think he'll definitely see a lot more minutes at the backup one. A lot more than Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Some have pointed out Nickeil as a potential backup point guard option. I don't really believe in his ball handling tendencies as much as I do with Luke Kennard. If that experiment doesn't work, if Luke Kennard all of a sudden just forgets how to handle the ball and it puts Atlanta in a pretty bad position, another possibility is this guy right here, Vit Krejci. The Hawks tested him in this role early last season, and I can just say it right here, it didn't go well. Those minutes did not look very good. Vit looked very uncomfortable. He progressed he had his best NBA season last year, don't get me wrong, but if he was going on that same trajectory that he was at the beginning of the season when he was just running the backup one after Kobe Bufkin had gotten hurt. As y'all all remember, at the beginning of last season, Kobe Bufkin got that season-ending injury, but then Vit was forced into that role, and he didn't look too good. However, Krejci has grown since then, after playing that whole season where he had his most efficient season on his highest volume. He gained valuable experience that year, and also this summer as the primary option for the Czech Republic. He played on their national team for Eurobasket. We covered it here, and while he struggled, I mean, those are some valuable reps, and he was playing as their number one option. He may be better equipped to handle backup point guard duties in the NBA, so I wouldn't be surprised if they gave that some run. But in short, this isn't something where, on paper it certainly looks like the Hawks are really missing depth there, but they do have internal options if none of these guys I list later in the video want to come to Atlanta. None of them are truly proven as reliable lead guards, but they can make it work, and that's where things get interesting when we talk about free agency, because technically free agency isn't over until a certain time in the season. So Atlanta can sign a player, any player that they want right now, if he fits into the financial restrictions that I will talk about in a second. So here's where the Bufkin trade may have unlocked something bigger. So with Kobe Bufkin's contract off the books completely, just not there anymore, Atlanta now has an additional $4.5 million in cap flexibility. That's what Bufkin was making annually. This now leaves them at $7.7 million under the luxury tax. And we know Tony Ressler is not going to pay the luxury tax this offseason. He hasn't in a very long time. And with the biannual exception of $5.1 million still available because of them adding this salary. I mean, losing this salary and adding more cap space. This puts the Hawks in a position to chase any veteran guard that they want that's still remaining, other than guys like these guys wouldn't be guards, but I was thinking kind of for a second, the remaining restricted free agents like Jonathan Kuminga, and actually Quentin Grimes is still a guard, but I'm not going to really list him as a target because he would certainly be out of the Hawks pay range, because I'm sure he would want $15 million plus, and the Hawks cannot pay that, but it puts them in prime position to chase a veteran guard that they want. And the biggest name that is still available is the 9-time NBA All-Star, former MVP Russell Westbrook. So now, before you roll your eyes, and I know Russell Westbrook is going to get a lot of, if the Hawks were to sign him, if they did come to terms with Westbrook, it would be met by a lot of criticism. People would be talking about Atlanta ruined their offseason, but then some people would be loving it, and I think that's the more rational option. I mean, let's look at the numbers. Westbrook, who was in a bench role last season with the Denver Nuggets, he played with Jokic and the Nuggets. He had one of his best seasons in a while. A very underrated year last year, and I am shocked that he's still on the waivers after the year that he had. He averaged 13.3 points, nearly 5 rebounds, over 6 assists, and 1.4 steals per game, all in under 28 minutes a night. That is very elite production for the amount of minutes he was playing. He also shot, and while this isn't a very good percentage, he shot 32.3% from deep. On paper, that doesn't look very good, but that is actually Westbrook's best mark since his MVP season back in 2017. I mean, back when he was in the peak of his career, his three-point percentage was like 34%. This is the highest it's been since then. I mean, in previous years, after his MVP season and then before last season, I mean, he had shot like 29, 28%, pretty much every year. But he shot 32% last season. So, I mean, getting in a Atlanta system where they're going to be very three-point heavy and he's going to get a lot of open looks, I mean, I like it. I mean, he'll also be someone who can attack downhill and get to the basket. And Atlanta doesn't have a guy like that really in the second unit. So I think that they could seriously benefit from bringing in a guy like Westbrook. If they were to bring in Russ, they would instantly have one of the deepest second units in the NBA. And I think it really isn't too bad of an argument to say that this would be the best bench in the NBA, just purely looking at the numbers and system fit. I mean, Russ's pace and energy and playmaking would all provide an immediate solution to their backup point guard dilemma. I mean, if you can sign him to a 1-year deal, you're looking at, this is a real opportunity to go and win a championship. If the Hawks prefer a cheaper, lower risk option, though, which is a lot more realistic, if they even decide to bring in anyone outside of the internal options like Keaton Wallace, guys like Dennis Smith Jr. and DeLon Wright both stand out. So Dennis Smith, despite being out of the league this past season, he showed in his lone season in Brooklyn in 2024 that he can seriously still defend at a high level and run an offense competently. Trae Young had actually the other day, which, this might not be coincidental, and we're going to talk about another thing that might not be coincidental in the next segment, but this is a little interesting, and as I'm saying it, like I didn't even plan to talk about this, but I was talking about how Trae had tweeted something in support of Dennis Smith Jr. I don't have the exact tweet up right now, but he said he should still be in the league, and I certainly agree with him. But then, a couple days later, the Hawks trade Kobe Bufkin. They now have an open roster spot, and they need a backup point guard. Dennis Smith could make a lot of sense. I mean, he'd be cheap. He wouldn't be someone that Atlanta would have had to part ways with Kobe Bufkin for, considering that he'll probably just take $1 million. But regardless, he's an interesting target. DeLon Wright, meanwhile, as we all know, he has history with the Hawks. I'm sure you guys love DeLon Wright. He was a fan favorite during his 2021-2022 stint in Atlanta. His ability to play both with and without Trae Young makes him a safe system-fitting option. Kind of a guy who's like a low-risk, high-reward option. I mean, he's a very good role player and a guy that you want if you're trying to build a winner. I love DeLon Wright. I think he would fit perfect on this team, and honestly, that's probably my top target for Atlanta to go after for their backup point guard position. So, of course, though, and all those guys we mentioned were available in free agency, but free agency is not the only path here. The Hawks could also turn to the trade market for help because there are a lot of kind of young backup point guards that are on the trade block right now because of their organizations having a logjam at the guard position. Two names on the trade block in particular stand out. Tyler Kolek of the New York Knicks, who we actually talked about in the last episode, and Devin Carter of the Sacramento Kings, another interesting guy. Kolek is an interesting situation. So the Knicks already have Jalen Brunson, Miles McBride, Jordan Clarkson, and now Malcolm Brogdon in their guard rotation. That Brogdon signing really kind of made this a legitimate report. It could leave Kolek buried in that second unit. And, according to Clutch Points, at least one team has already expressed interest in trading for Kolek. Now, this is another thing where it's like the timing of that report alongside the Bufkin trade makes it worth wondering. Could that team be the Atlanta Hawks? Have the Hawks shown interest in acquiring Tyler Kolek? I like his game a little more than Bufkin's. Not to compare like little white point guard to little white point guard, but he really is given like TJ McConnell, just in that, he kind of has that dog mentality, and he's kind of a relentless player. And while his rookie year numbers weren't eye popping, the flashes were there. He showed exactly what the Knicks wanted to see. He kind of struggled in summer league, but then again, that's not something you can really make too far of a judgment on, especially after just one season in the NBA. I mean, he's a smart playmaker with toughness who could thrive in the right situation. And I would like to see him develop in Atlanta. So that's a very interesting target for me personally. But meanwhile, Devin Carter faces a similar logjam in Sacramento. It's a very similar situation, actually, with the Kings adding multiple guards this offseason, and actually one of them likely being Russell Westbrook, who we just talked about. Carter might end up being an odd man out. And this is another situation of a rookie after, kind of struggling with his shot, but showing flashes, just ending up too deep into the rotation where the teams are just going to have to potentially get rid of them. I mean, he's a strong defender. Here's the thing about Devin Carter is he's much more proven as a defender. He's certainly a developing offensive player, but the numbers aren't too bad. He could be a perfect fit in Atlanta's second unit if given the opportunity, just kind of as a low volume guy. Honestly, a similar role to what a guy like DeLon Wright would have, except he's got several years less in age. So both Tyler Kolek and Devin Carter represent exactly what Atlanta may be looking for. Low risk, high upside, developmental guards who won't cost much but could pay off in a big way and eventually be consistent rotation guys as they progress into their career. Just an investment like that could seriously pay dividends for an Atlanta Hawks organization who is trying to maintain their timeline while also competing now. I love it. It's super cool. I love the vision that the front office has really made a reality. So to wrap this video up, Kobe Bufkin's trade marks the end of what could have been a long developmental story in Atlanta and ended up not, but we wish him the absolute best in Brooklyn. While his time with the Hawks never truly materialized, the move seriously creates some real flexibility and raises big questions about how the Hawks will handle their backup guard situation moving forward. Do they roll with internal options like Luke Kennard or Vit Krejci at that backup one? Do they make a splash by adding a veteran free agent like Russell Westbrook? Or do they take a chance on a younger guard through the trade market with players like Tyler Kolek of the Knicks and Devin Carter of the Kings being pretty realistic options? If Atlanta wanted them, they could probably go get them. Just a matter of if they want to make that move or not, or roll with the internal guys. So the bottom line is this: the Hawks front office is signaling that they are serious about competing right now, as they really have all offseason. And with training camp right around the corner, the next move could seriously define Atlanta's season. So that's going to do it for today's breakdown. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update. We're going to be pumping out videos every single day, keeping you guys informed on the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. But let me know in the comments what you think about all of that. I mean, who would you like to see Atlanta bring in, and what are your thoughts on the Kobe Bufkin trade in general, only getting cash considerations out of him? A lot of interesting stuff going on in Atlanta right now, and that's why you won't want to miss every video we put out. So hit that notification bell. Once again, I'm Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.